Hey, how's it going? So what I thought I would do is just from time to time take a look at some of the more unique things in my Star Wars EU collection. Partially just to, I don't know, it's fun to share some of this cool stuff. I don't think all this stuff is extremely well known. It's often pretty easy to get. It's just hard to know about its existence. Some of the stuff's pretty old. Some of the stuff that's even a little newer is just more obscure. So I thought it'd be fun to share with you and see what you guys think and give you some tips on what's in it and what's worth reading and what's worth trying to pick up yourself. I think the first thing I wanted to start with is these really old, really cool Marvel books, Marvel Star Wars books. And what I mean by that is actual comic books in like the literal sense. So here's a Marvel adaptation of The Return of the Jedi. Really nice color color newsprint, color comic style, basically taking some of the actual comic books and putting it in book form. This is something that here's the Empire Strikes Back version, by the way. Same thing, nice, nice color comic style. Um, what's neat about this is back in the day, back in the early '80s, Marvel did this quite a bit. You can still find in used bookstores, like Spider-Man comics, Hulk comics, Avengers comics in that format. So they take a lot of the actual comic book storylines and they just put it in book size form. I don't know how often that really is done anymore, but it's something that Marvel was pretty keen on doing for a while. And because they had the Star Wars license, it was really neat to sort of see some of this stuff in that form as well. Putting aside the film adaptations, which are worth getting if you're a completist like I am. I mean, I've been spending my whole life trying to get every scrap of Star Wars EU bit of material I can. As cool as the film adaptation ones are, the one you really want to get is this one. It's I don't know if it has an official name other than just sort of the Marvel Illustrated book. You can identify it by it's the one with the four new adventures, and they advertise in color. Um, this is a great one. For years, like particularly like pre-internet, this was one of the holy grails. This was one of the things that not many people knew about, not many people had a way of getting a hold of. In the era of eBay and Amazon and everything else, it's not that hard to find, and it's not incredibly expensive either. But what's really cool about it is that it collects a lot of the old Pizzazz magazine comic strips related to Star Wars. Now, Pizzazz magazine, not unlike this, was also one of those holy grails, one of those things that back in the day, if you knew about it, good luck trying to track them down. Um, it's not impossible to find them all. You're probably never going to go, even on eBay, find someone selling a whole set of Pizzazz magazines. By the way, Pizzazz was a Marvel magazine. It didn't run very long, maybe just a couple of years, but in most of the issues, there were really cool, really, really early Star Wars comic runs. Some of the stories in here are things like Way of the Wookiee, Day After the Death Star. Now, these are all things that originally appear in Pizzazz, end up in this. The good news about a lot of the Pizzazz stuff is that, oh, by the way, some of these Pizzazz comics also ended up in the Marvel Star Wars UK magazine, which, again, you can sort of find from time to time. And as fun as it is to have some of those, what's neat about it is that, worst case, if you can't find the old Pizzazz, if you can't find the Marvel UK magazines, if you can't find the Marvel Illustrated book versions, you can find a lot of these things in the Dark Horse omnibuses of Wild Space 1 and 2. So those are really worth getting. I mean, unfortunately, those are out of print now. You can still get them digitally. You'll get them with the Legends banner. But if you can find those on eBay, those are worth getting, not just for the old Pizzazz stuff, but for everything else it has, like the Applejack comic strips, and for anyone who's looked through the Wild Space 1 and 2, it's a lot of fun. There's some pretty obscure stuff in there, and this Pizzazz stuff is a big part of that. I just love having this one. I mean, I've got the Pizzazz magazines, I've got the Wild Space omnibuses, but it's just so much fun to have this. There's another version of this too. I think there were two um, sort of non-movie related Star Wars collections, and I have to pull the other one out someday to show you guys. But this is one that I was really happy to finally find after years of first hearing about its potential existence, rumors that someone had this thing, and what was it? It was this Marvel book or whatever, right? And then being able to find it myself was pretty exciting. I think the one other thing that I wanted to share, this is definitely something I want to do a lot more on in general, is to talk about all the various role-playing magazines that introduced various Star Wars storylines, characters, supplemental ideas for your D6 or D20 Star Wars games, as they either related to West End Games or Wizard of the Coast. What's really interesting about some of these is that, particularly the earlier ones, late 80s, early 90s ones, it's not entirely clear whether or not within the Legends canon they actually really are part of the storyline or not. There aren't a lot of obvious contradictions. It's just not clear like what the licensing situation was. I mean, I don't think any of them were out and out illegally done. Like nothing was pirated, right? These were like mainstream, legit role player guide magazines. It's just that at this point, it's just pretty unclear probably to find the paperwork to sort of know, did Lucasfilm license this stuff or not? It's really hard to say. So as far as I'm concerned, if it doesn't contradict, it's part of the EU storyline. One of the really cool ones, and this is a slightly later one because you've got a lot of things that go back like to Challenge magazine in the early 90s, and God, there's so many, and I'll go through all of those. But this is one that I've always really liked, and this is from a magazine that I don't know lasted very long, Masters of Roleplaying. This is Masters of Roleplaying issue number 8. As far as I know, it's the only one that has anything, any sort of original content ideas for Star Wars. So from this whole run, it's the one to pick up, and it's not super easy to find. I don't know if there are any digital versions floating around online, but every once in a blue moon, if you really dig hard, you can find this in whatever sort of gaming stores you go to, at conventions, and gosh, every once in a while, something like this will pop up on eBay. What's cool about this is that it doesn't just have Star Wars gamer content, but there's neat stuff. There's like a Terry Brooks interview, kind of just talks about all of the stuff he does, including Star Wars. What's neat about these things is that they just show how incredibly deep the Star Wars legend canon continuity really was and really is. I mean, it's also connected. So this is a really obscure character, but Jedi Master Bear, who has this brief mention in one of my favorite Clone War books, Dark Rendezvous, the Yoda story. There's this really brief mention of him, and he's an instructor at the Jedi Temple. Well, where did he first appear? Because you don't really see him in any other book or comic, or certainly in the movies or TV shows. Where did he come from? He came from a magazine. He came from Masters of Roleplaying, issue number 8. By the way, I'm such a total nerd. I've got this in protective wrapping, as I do all my magazines, the RPGs, the Star Wars Insiders, the Star Wars Galaxies, everything's like that. So anyway, Masters of Roleplaying, definitely a fun one. But yeah, so just a little introduction to some of the more obscure stuff. I love this stuff in particular because it's just at the end of the day, while we're waiting for Disney to give us, back the Legends canon, right? Waiting for them to continue to develop the story post Crucible, close a lot of those gaps. There's no shortage of stuff really to dive into. I mean, if you've read all the adult novels, great. Well, then there's at least as many children novels, right? You read those, read the comics, right? You read those, play the role-playing games. If you don't want to play the role-playing games, just read the supplemental material. You done with that? Go to the RPGs, go to the magazines, find the comic strips, right? Find the old Marvel Illustrated books, find the pizzazz, right? There's so much stuff there. So these are just scratching the surface. So I'll be back next time just to sort of find some more obscure treasures from my Star Wars Legends collection. And yeah, looking forward to your thoughts. Hope you guys appreciate this. And if you guys know of any other, in particular, Masters of Role-Playing articles about Star Wars, or really any other cool RPG magazines of ambiguous canon or not, please share them in the comments below.